On November 11, 1918, the world rejoiced as the defeated German Empire laid down its weapons and capitulated, bringing World War I to a close. That same day, in Vienna, Austria, another remarkable event was unfolding. After 650 years as one of Europe's ruling dynasties, the Habsburgs relinquished control of their Austro-Hungarian Empire. It marked the end of an era and a way of life, and the burden fell upon Emperor Karl I. His grandfather had not foreseen that the empire would collapse. The monarchy had endured for more than 600 years, continually adjusting through marriage and warfare. When something has existed that long, it is difficult to imagine it disappearing overnight. Yet it did vanish, and for the remainder of his short life, Karl, the last emperor of Austria and king of Hungary, seemed like an anachronism, a man out of his time. He ascended the throne during an extraordinarily challenging period. Although he made sincere efforts, fate was not on his side. He was regarded as kind-hearted and thoughtful, but many believed that whatever he attempted ended unsuccessfully. Still, making the effort was important to him. In mid-November 1916, after 2.5 years of conflict, the residents of Vienna, once a lively and flourishing city, had grown accustomed to anxiety and uncertainty. Now even more disturbing news spread. The ruler who had governed for 68 years, Emperor Franz Joseph, was dying. For roughly 6 decades, he had shaped the empire's culture. His image hung in classrooms and public offices and appeared on currency. He was widely viewed as a gentle, grandfatherly head of state, and many questioned how anyone could fill such a role. Archduke Karl, young and inexperienced, stood ready to inherit his family's crown. He descended from a lengthy line of Habsburgs who had governed one of the largest empires in the world. The dynasty began expanding its dominion in the late 1200s when Emperor Rudolf von Habsburg claimed the ancient kingdom of Bohemia. Over the next 6.5 centuries, through combat, inheritance, and strategic marriages, the Habsburgs broadened their territories. At its peak, the empire stretched across much of continental Europe, encompassing around 15 languages and diverse peoples who would later belong to nations such as Italy, Slovenia, Yugoslavia, and Poland, including Muslim Slavs, Christians, and Jews. Unlike nations that could endure beyond a ruling family, the Habsburg state was inseparable from its dynasty. While France survived the execution of Louis XVI, Austria-Hungary was largely the personal construction of the Habsburg line. At its height, more than 50 million people lived in relative harmony within the immense empire, which became a stronghold of culture and sophistication. The monarchy functioned efficiently, led by a devoted and diligent sovereign, supported by a capable army and dynamic economy. It excelled in philosophy and science, producing figures like Freud, and in music, from Mozart and Haydn to Beethoven, Schumann, and Brahms. Culturally, it stood at the summit. Following a short illness, Emperor Franz Joseph passed away and was laid to rest on November 30, 1916. Representatives from across Europe attended his funeral. Walking behind the hearse were 29-year-old Karl and his wife Zita, clad in black. Some compared their emergence to a Camelot-like moment, a youthful, energetic couple stepping into the roles of emperor and empress, featured on postcards and in magazines. Many were captivated by this vibrant new ruler, who already had a blonde, curly-haired son to succeed him. Karl had intended to pursue a military profession and earned a reputation as a reliable and faithful officer in the imperial army. His wife, Princess Zita of Bourbon-Parma, was Italian-born, and they had known each other since childhood. As she matured into an attractive young woman, he arranged opportunities to see her, and their relationship gradually deepened. After a brief engagement, 24-year-old Karl and 19-year-old Zita married in October 1911. Their union was a genuine partnership founded on love, respect, and faith. They complemented one another, and Karl deeply valued Zita's counsel. Their shared Roman Catholic devotion formed the foundation of their inner resilience. For Karl, religion was central to everything. His commitment to the church was exceptional. He attended daily Mass and communion and frequently opened meetings with prayer. It was often joked that if the emperor was missing, he would likely be found in the chapel. From childhood, Karl received rigorous religious training and inspired loyal followers. At age 8, he drew the attention of Mother Vincentia, a nun believed to possess prophetic gifts. She insisted that he be surrounded by prayer and safeguarded because he would become emperor and face immense spiritual trials. Her prophecy led to the formation of a prayer circle that later evolved into the Emperor Karl League of Prayers, remaining active decades after his death. Few could have imagined that Karl would ascend the throne so young. In the Habsburg monarchy, succession passed to the eldest male heir. Emperor Franz Joseph's son, Crown Prince Rudolf, was expected to inherit, but he lived a troubled life. Though married, he sought a partner for a double suicide and eventually found one willing. In 1889, the Crown Prince and his 17-year-old companion were discovered dead in a hunting lodge. Next in succession were Franz Joseph's brothers, Archdukes Maximilian and Karl Ludwig. Maximilian, ambitious and unlikely to gain Austria-Hungary's throne, accepted Napoleon III's proposal to become Emperor of Mexico, only to be executed by Mexican opponents of foreign control in 1867. Karl Ludwig, a devout man, died after drinking contaminated water from the River Jordan during a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. His sons, Franz Ferdinand and Otto, Karl's father, known as Handsome Otto, survived him. Otto died at 39, reportedly from venereal disease. Franz Ferdinand made two critical errors. He married a noblewoman lacking princely rank, thereby excluding his children from succession, and in June 1914 he rode with his wife through Sarajevo, where both were assassinated. His death, the spark that ignited World War I, suddenly positioned Karl as the unexpected heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In December 1916, 29-year-old Karl and 24-year-old Zita were crowned in Budapest in a grand ceremony, with their young son Archduke Otto beside them. As emperor, Karl's foremost concern was the suffering of his people. Since August 1914, Europe had been consumed by World War I, with Britain, France, and Russia fighting against Germany and Austria-Hungary. Yet Austria-Hungary was no match for Germany, which dominated militarily and economically and largely directed wartime strategy. By the time Karl assumed the throne, nearly 500,000 Austro-Hungarian soldiers had perished. He had witnessed the agony firsthand, seen heaps of bodies, smelled decay, and was said to have wept at the devastation. He was equally troubled by civilian hardship. Food scarcity was widespread, housing was inadequate, and with coal in short supply, citizens endured bitter cold. Karl implemented significant reforms, including establishing one of the world's first ministries of social welfare and creating a ministry of public health. He introduced rent protections that still remain in Austria today. Closely connected to his people, he was often seen conversing with civilians at soup kitchens, maintaining sincere and compassionate contact with those he ruled. Karl I of Austria's reforms did not end at his palace gates. He and Zita of Bourbon-Parma insisted that if their people had to endure hardship, the imperial household would also cut back. Food in the palace was reduced to simple military rations. German generals who visited complained about the poor meals, but they were told, "That's the food our soldiers receive," and the discussion ended. Yet Karl understood that as long as the war continued, his soldiers would perish and his people would suffer hunger. The only true answer was peace, and this became his purpose. He believed that peace and mutual understanding in Europe would spare hundreds of thousands of lives, relieve the daily burden on millions, and prevent further devastation. From the moment he ascended the throne, Karl's foremost objective was to secure peace, a bold stance at a time when speaking of peace was politically unpopular. Though he maintained cordial relations with his cousin, Wilhelm II, he repeatedly attempted to convince him to end the war. German generals, confident in their submarine campaign and persuaded that England would soon become an isolated fortress, brushed aside such warnings. Wilhelm viewed Karl as weak, but Karl remained resolute. Determined to act, he secretly pursued negotiations behind the Kaiser's back. In 1917, he wrote to Raymond Poincaré, voicing hope for reconciliation and an end to the misery of millions. The letter, discreetly delivered through Zita's brothers, even pledged to urge Germany to return Alsace-Lorraine. However, the course of the war had shifted. The United States had entered the conflict, and the French and British, assured of victory, were unwilling to accept peace without their conditions being satisfied. In April 1918, France exposed Karl's secret talks, provoking fury in Germany. Accused of betrayal, Karl faced German retaliation as they tightened their grip over Austria-Hungary's foreign and military policies, effectively chaining the empire to Berlin. The diplomatic risk backfired, he was marginalized, and his authority weakened. Over the following months, the situation deteriorated further. On the front lines, German and Austro-Hungarian forces lost territory, soldiers deserted, workers staged strikes, and nationalist movements demanded independence and even Karl's abdication. In the fall of 1918, hoping to preserve order, Karl issued the People's Manifesto, proposing to reshape Austria-Hungary into a federation of equal states, granting ethnic groups equal rights in a structure comparable to the United States. But it proved too little, too late. By October, the empire began to disintegrate. Czechoslovakia proclaimed independence, the Republic of Austria gained recognition from the United States, and Hungary declared separation. On November 11, 1918, World War I concluded as Germany signed an armistice and Wilhelm abdicated. That same day, facing mounting pressure and fearing for his family's safety, the 31-year-old Karl surrendered authority over Austria but declined to formally abdicate, believing his right to rule was divinely ordained. After 650 years, Habsburg rule ended, and his reign, just over 100 weeks, was over. He, Zita, and their children departed for exile in Switzerland. During the next 3 years, Karl made 2 unsuccessful efforts to reclaim his throne. The British eventually exiled the family to Madeira, a Portuguese island off the coast of Morocco. There, stripped of wealth and influence, they lived modestly. Despite adversity, it was in some respects a peaceful time. Karl spent hours walking, reflecting, praying, and bonding with his children. After 6 months in a cold, damp residence, he contracted pneumonia. In his final moments, he expressed profound love for Zita, entrusted his children to Jesus' care, and offered his life for the future unity of his people. He died on April 1, 1922, at age 34, leaving behind his 30-year-old pregnant widow and 7 children. Zita wore black for the remainder of her life, raising 8 children alone with strength and determination. She lived until 1989, witnessing the former empire divided into Austria, Hungary, Romania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. After Karl's death, the Emperor Karl I of Prayers campaigned for his canonization. In 2004, more than 300 descendants assembled in Rome for his beatification ceremony, where he was presented as a model for politicians striving for moral integrity in public service. During his lifetime, Karl was branded a traitor and a failure, driven into exile by his own people. Yet many now argue that his brief reign should be remembered less for its shortcomings and more for his genuine, though unsuccessful, attempts to reform his empire and bring World War I to an end. In that sense, he may have become more impactful in death than any emperor could hope to be in life, standing with his people in spirit even beyond the grave.